Hey guys, are you still upset that Bitcoin's not at 20K? There, I just shed a tear for you. But what if I told you that Bitcoin was not the end-all be-all when it comes to cryptocurrency? What if I told you that there's more reasons to be excited than just Bitcoin? What if you know what, I guess I'm not gonna be doing any of that, but I got an interview with Justin Bons, and he is the CIO and co-founder of CyberCapital. That's right, follow-up interview with Justin. I am so excited because he's gonna give you guys so many more reasons to be excited and optimistic about the market, so tune in. So, hey Justin, how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to talk to you about something that we talked about in our last interview. You're one of the few people that I've spoke to that have mentioned that this bubble that we've experienced is not just a one-time thing, or you mentioned that it's cyclical, and in fact I think you said it was the sixth bubble that's burst. Can you maybe touch upon that again and tell our audience whether you think this is gonna keep happening throughout the year, or if we're just waiting for one more big bubble, or how you think this is gonna play out?
So I definitely expect this to continue. I wouldn't expect any type of what we would consider stability equal to maybe something like other large fiat currencies until we hit very large market capitalization and underlying use. If cryptocurrency remains a speculative asset in terms of its majority of value, then it will keep being this volatile, essentially. This is why I think having an underlying utility is also very important in building this new economy. So I'll also say to that in terms of the big bubble, as you put it, I think that depends on how you feel about cryptocurrency and what roles that's going to fill in the world. Since in my view, I find a good historical example to actually be the dot-com bubble. Since in the dot-com bubble, I think according to some estimates, they were looking at something around 5 trillion in value, and that was just US investors and only accredited investors actually. So I think having an expectation that, and I'm not saying this will happen the next bubble, it might be several more cycles of up and down before we get there, and I'm not sure what form or what name that will even take. But what's important to consider here is that it's that end goal. So for me, I would never say we've gone through our last major bubble, at least through this historical phase, until we hit something around the 5 trillion mark, which seems ambitious, but I suppose I also see cryptocurrency as being very important for global infrastructure and economics. So in that sense, I feel the amount of value that cryptocurrency can swallow up, not just as a store of value, but as a currency, as a underlying source of truth for governments and DAOs and all of these exciting things, this kind of new economy that we're creating. I think we need to ask ourselves, well, how valuable do you think this would be in that future world we imagine? And I think we are, fundamentally speculating on the future. So I expect more bubbles to come, up and down, and like I said previously, we're in our sixth bubble now. So well, it's a roller coasters of fun at least. So
yeah. Do you think the crypto industry has already adapted to the market conditions after the crash?
Somewhat. I mean, to a degree. I think we see it with a lot of companies, downsizing and adapting. And there's a certain type of natural selection that takes place. So I think that's been a very positive thing in a way. But I haven't seen it to the degree yet that I've wanted to. So. You mentioned technical analysis before, and I think you're right in many ways in trying to predict these markets. You're trying to predict the minds of the masses in the future, and that's a hard thing to do. And as far as technical analysis works, I see it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. If enough people believe in the technical analysis, then it will work, because that's what ends up manifesting itself in the market.
Can you actually, I'm kind of interested in hearing what you feel about Bitcoin, because this is the second interview that you kind of touched on it, and I feel like you have something to say. I'd love to hear it, because you're not nearly as bullish on Bitcoin as some of the other people we've spoken to.
no, I would love to do that actually. And let me see if I can lay that out a bit. So my first critique, and a lot of this is actually related to the block size limit, which changes the underlying economics of the system. And this is why I've been a supporter of Bitcoin Cash as well, and a number of other movements that have kind of gone in the other direction. So for me, the issue is, so the first issue is that in a blockchain, right, you need to pay for the security of the blockchain. You need to pay for it with the block reward or the fees that you collect, right? So in Bitcoin, the block reward is slowly reducing the amount of inflation that Bitcoin creates in order to pay for its own security. So the plan in Bitcoin was that eventually inflation stops, and then you need to pay for security with fees generated from the network. And the block size debate, which I think many people are familiar with, was very much a debate about two different opposing points of view. Is that how do we pay for the security of the network, right? So you can either pay for the security of the network one way by limiting the block size, right? Thereby you end up with a system where you need very, very high fees, right, in order for that to actually function. So last I calculated it, it actually stands, if you want the current security of the network you have today, so security at current scale, with a 1 megabyte block size limit, you will need to, transactions will have to cost at least $100 per transaction, right? And that's at current scale in order to pay for the security of the network. So at global scale, this would be thousands of dollars per transaction, quite realistically. So in my view, I don't consider this a viable system. So the alternative way of looking at this is that you actually have a high block size limit, and the block size limit determines how many transactions you can fit in a block. So if you have a high block size limit, then you can have many transactions, each paying a very small fee, thereby paying for the security of the network. So what we're seeing here is a distinction between a high fee, low volume network.
Yeah. If we abstract from Bitcoin for a bit, though, are there any altcoins that you would recommend paying attention to? Anyone in specific?
In the in CyberCapital fund, we have more than 60 different assets, and actually, it might be interesting for me to talk about investment strategy a little bit. So when looking at cryptocurrencies, what we're able to do is we're able to actually divide them in a technological stack. So what we do is we have a protocol layer, a network layer, and an application layer. Okay, so the protocol layer is the base layer, is the blockchain. That's where the consensus lies. Examples of this would be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, Dash. I could go on. These are all examples of base layers in the blockchain. That's what everything else is built on top of, right? So on top of the base layer, the protocol layer, you have the network layer. And these are projects like, if I was name some examples, like Chainlink and 0x Protocol, and maybe arguably the Lightning Network could maybe be considered a network layer. And on top of that, you have the application layer, which is most often what people interface with directly. And the applications are built of all of the different components of the network layers, which are built on which are all built on that solid foundation of the blockchain, right? So what we've done is about 70% of the capital is inside of the base layers, the protocol layers, so these large base layers, and then the remaining 30% is really in these smaller applications.
I was actually going to ask you, is there anyone else that's doing that as well?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. So examples of other blockchains that are using this mechanism are Decreed. Decreed also has a self-funding mechanism. Zencash, interestingly, actually has a self-funding mechanism. Pivx has a self-funding mechanism. EOS was supposed to have a self-funding mechanism, but that's currently up in the air right now. Cardano, obviously, which is an unfinished project still, also has a self-funding mechanism, and so will Tezos, as a matter of fact.
If we're going to talk about Ripple for a second.
Sure.
One word to summarize what your feelings are about Ripple. Go.
It's a federated blockchain, and the token has no utility currently.
when it comes to our viewers that are trying to get investment advice, do you think they shouldn't be scared by what's happened, by this past year? They could still earn. That's not something they should be worried about.
It might seem paradoxical, but the more the price goes down, the better investment it becomes. So we need to reverse our emotions, let's say, I think is what we need to try to do. I think the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. I think that was Rothschild, if I'm not mistaken. So no. I think what matters is looking at the underlying fundamentals. The price is incredibly detached from the fundamentals, and I think the real question you have to ask yourself is, do you believe in this? Like, do you really believe in this, right? If you don't really believe in it, or if you don't really understand it, don't invest in it.
Yeah.
Really, I implore people, because more people are gonna most likely lose money here than make money. It's especially with all these moving chairs right now. It's a game of musical chairs. So I think that I think it's important to go into this with understanding. And usually what I tell people to do is, I don't tell people to invest in the space, I tell people to learn about it. And if you learn about it, you might really want to invest and see the potential, but that's something else, And I think, look, I've been through a few of these cycles now of the bull and bear runs, and I've been at the end of an 80% loss in the last bear run as well, which the bear run lasted 2 years there, I think, something like that. And the thing is that ironically, I felt that the fundamentals were really improving during that period. And during the bull run, the fundamentals were not improving. so it's kind of detached, So I kind of feel like even if things are going incredibly well, the price just might go off and do its own thing. There's so many gamblers, so many speculators, so many people that don't really know what they're doing. So I think as long as you have a long-term investment horizon, don't expect to, get in and get out, think like 5-10 years, and keep following things, keep learning about it, get involved, even work towards this yourself, evangelize, get merchants to adopt things, implement it in your own business, use it day to day. If there's something you want to happen in the world, then lead by example.
Yeah, I have a couple friends that are, they play the stock market a lot, and they just started to dabble in cryptocurrency, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. And I remember getting a bunch of texts and phone calls just, when the most recent bubble burst. And they're like, I'm getting out, you should probably get out too. Have you seen what's happening? And I was trying to explain to them, it doesn't matter if it bottoms out completely. I'm here for the bigger picture. It doesn't matter what the price is as much, because I believe in this.
And that's not to disrespect the traders at all, because many traders do their thing and they provide liquidity to the market. I think it's important to understand that there's a distinction. There's a distinction between being an investor and being a trader. I'm not a trader. I do investment. And I think for anyone wanting to put money into this space themselves, I think it's very important to make a clear distinction between that and realize what you're doing. And don't invest what you're not willing to lose, and be willing to lose 90% of it and not have that money for 5-10 years, and stay up to date with what's happening, because things can move around incredibly quickly. But like I said, what matters is if you believe in this, and fundamentally I do really believe in this. I think that
as you explained that last bit to me, I felt like I could hear an orchestra at the end of a movie playing as you're giving this motivational speech, this inspiring speech. So I think on that note, that's all the questions I have for you today, Justin. That was really awesome.
Oh, fantastic. I really enjoyed that, and I hope to talk to you again soon. And
yeah, me too. I really hope we could do this again. It's fun every time.
Absolutely. All right, you have a great night.
Hey, thank you.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Alright guys, so what do you think about that? I mean, I really hope if anything, Justin kind of taught you not to be afraid and not just invest in Bitcoin, because there's so much more out there. There's so many great altcoins, there's so many great alternatives. Crypto as an industry is solid. Don't be afraid to invest other places, guys. And as always, don't be afraid to hit that like, comment, and subscribe button as well, because come on, Nakamoto Jedi, hit that bell. Thanks for watching, guys.